Today's question is all about a cat with long hair that's getting poop stuck around its back end. So what could be causing that and what could we do? It's also getting really stressed at the groomer. So how can we help reduce that stress? But before I get into this question, here's the intro.
Welcome to Call the Vet, the show that answers all your dog and cat questions so they can live healthier, happier lives. And here's your host, veterinarian Dr. Alex Avery.
Hi and welcome to episode 35 of Call the Vet. I'm Dr. Alex and I'm the vet behind ourpetshealth.com, and on this show I answer all of the questions that you have about your pet's health so that you can make informed decisions and help them live a healthier, happier life, which is ultimately what my mission is all about. So I'm really grateful that you're here, and if we're meeting for the first time and you're a new listener, then make sure that you're subscribed to the podcast. I've got lots more valuable questions lined up for you that you definitely won't want to miss out on. And also, if you've got a burning question about anything to do with your dog or cat's health, how you're looking after them, how you can prevent them becoming unwell and keeping them healthy, or what you should be considering if they are unwell, if they've been diagnosed with a certain condition, if they've become injured, then just head over to callthevet.org and submit your question there for me to answer in an upcoming episode.
Get your questions answered at callthevet.org.
And today's question is from Christina, who writes, "My cat is long-haired and I've noticed that sometimes poop gets stuck in her fur. She is very sassy with people that she doesn't know, and I'm sure she wouldn't tolerate getting a haircut from a groomer. Do you have any advice on this?" So great question, Christina. I think it's not all that uncommon for long-haired cats, especially older long-haired cats, to get a little bit matted and to maybe get a little bit messy around their back end. And the first thing we need to be asking in this case, in your cat's case, but in any cat who's getting matted for whatever reason, or for any cat who is getting poop stuck around their back end, is why is that happening? So we need to think, is there long-term diarrhea, long-term soft stools that could all indicate an intestinal problem that we actually should be trying to investigate and try and rectify, rather than just do the symptomatic kind of treatment, if you like, or prevention by clipping that back hair? Is it just really very long hair that needs to get trimmed? Is that actually the problem? Are the stools normal and the hair is just really, really long? So that's more likely to be the case if you've got a younger, long-haired cat whose stools are otherwise normal. Is your cat having problems grooming themselves? So did they always used to be absolutely fine, but now that they're getting older, they're having problems either keeping clean or they're getting matted, particularly around their back end, or maybe around the back of their spine or the inside of their back legs in their groin area? That's often the most common place where we start to get matting in an older cat. A big concern, if that was happening and otherwise that hadn't been a problem throughout their life, is arthritis, because cats, they just try and stop doing what hurts. And if it's hurting to reach around to those hard to reach places, those difficult to reach places, if that's hurting, your cat's going to stop grooming, and so they're not going to get rid of that hair coat that gets shed, and they're going to become matted. They may tolerate you handling them, but also if they're painful, they're not going to let others. So that's why your cat might be getting a little bit sassy with people that she doesn't know. She's not going to put up with being hurt by someone who she's got no relationship with. So that's something that we commonly see in cats with arthritis. They're really good at hiding their pain, and we need to look for these maybe more subtle signs that they are uncomfortable, rather than waiting for them to limp or carry their leg, which really they tend not to do. So if it's not pain and it's just a grooming problem, you might actually be surprised about how tolerant your cat is at the groomers. So they're not in their own environment, and they definitely behave differently than they do at home. I mean, I see this all the time in the vet clinic. The owners will warn me that their cat is really challenging. They've maybe come in with scratches themselves to getting them into their carry cage, but actually, when they're on the table, when I'm examining them, they are as placid as you like, because they're not very happy about it, and they're likely pretty stressed out, but they become very handleable, and we can get what needs to be done very quickly. We don't have problems with that. We're also, as professionals, and the groomer would be the same, we're used to handling cats, we're used to reading cats' body language, and we're used to working with them. So very often we can get things done that are very difficult to do at home. So a clear example of this would be kind of pilling your cat, which can be a real challenge. So yeah, you might be surprised. There are ways that we can reduce stress though. So The first thing to do would be, if you're actually just needing to shorten that hair around the back end, then just do it yourself. Get some wireless clippers. You can get some pretty inexpensive ones that are pretty quiet as well. And then you can just gently and carefully and slowly just kind of trim that hair around their back end. You can also, if they are getting a little bit matted, you can gently clip those mats out. It's much safer to use clippers than scissors. So some people will use scissors, and if you're very careful, then absolutely you can do, but it is very easy to cut a cat's skin. So the skin's very delicate, especially in an older cat. It can be quite thin, and so it can be easy to cut by mistake, especially if you're working with mats, a cat who's matted, not necessarily just a little bit dirty as Christina's cat is. If they're really matted, then those mats can be very close to the skin, and actually, even with the best will in the world and the most care, there is a real risk of cutting their skin, and we do certainly from time to time have to end up stitching up serious kind of scissor wounds because that didn't quite go to plan. So other ways that you can reduce stress if your cat is getting a little bit anxious with that is just to distract with treats. So there's plenty of different treats out there that cats will love. So pick one that your cat loves, distract them with that. You could use a licky mat or something like that as well. That will provide that distraction while you just get that job done quickly. Also, just take it a little bit at a time. So if your cat's getting, you're distracting with treats, the first couple of minutes is fine, but then your cat's starting to get a bit agitated, just stop there and do a little bit more the next day. And if you're doing that, then before long you'll have worked your way through kind of all of the things that need to be trimmed and clipped and removed, that kind of thing. Now, if you're taking your cat to the vet or to the groomer, there's definitely things that we can do to reduce the stress of that. So the first one is to pick an appropriate carrier. So you get all of these kind of terrible cardboard carriers or fabric material carriers that aren't rigid and collapse, and it's really difficult to get your cat in to them. They don't feel secure. They're not great. You want a nice kind of secure plastic or metal one, often one that's kind of covered so that your cat can kind of see out, but they don't feel that everyone's looking at them, and that closes and is really nice and safe and secure, because the last thing you want to do is to pick up the carrier to take them into the vet clinic. They get out of the carrier and then run across the road and get hit on the road or get lost or anything like that. So make sure you've got an appropriate carrier, and then get your cat used to that carrier. So you could feed them in their carrier, you could have their normal bed in the carrier, so it's not just something that comes out when they're going to the vet or the cattery or the groomer. It's something that's out all the time, and actually it can become their safe space or the space where they normally get fed or get a reward. And so it's something that they don't just associate with a negative experience. So if they've had 99 positive experiences and then they get that one negative experience by going to the groomer or the vet, then they're not going to be put off that for life. Other things you can use is use a Fellaway pheromone spray. So Fellaway is a pheromone that cats normally release in their home environment when they're rubbing their cheek up against, maybe your leg or the corner of the furniture. It's the way of marking their home space and helps them feel relaxed and settled. So Fellaway spray is a synthetic version of that pheromone. It comes in a little spray pump that you can just spray onto the bedding that you're using in the cage, just to help them feel a little bit more comfortable. You can also just use their normal bedding, or you could use one of your jumpers or something like that, so it's got the kind of normal familiar scent as well, just to help them feel a little bit more relaxed. And then you can actually get them used to car journeys as well. So just the same way in a dog, if they're a little bit nervous in the car, you just pop them in the car, give them a treat, take them out. Once they're happy with that, then you could just turn the engine on. Once they're happy with that, then you could just drive around the block. So get them used to going into the car, get them used to having treats while they're in the car. So again, it's not always that they're only going in the car when they're going to have a more negative or a potentially more negative experience. And then kind of my fifth point to just reduce stress of a vet visit or groomer's visit is just to be on time, because if you're early and you're having to sit in the waiting room, then that's not great. If you're late, then it might be that actually you need to wait an awful long time for the next appointment, or you need to just go back home and then come and make another trip. So just be on time. And then when you're in the clinic, if you are having to wait for some time, just keep your cat away from any dogs. So the same goes with the groomer. Keep them away from dogs, so that you've not got dogs coming up and sniffing the entrance of the cage looking at your cat, because that is going to stress them out no end. If you can, have your cat in their cage on your lap, or it might be that you can lift them up onto the chair, or there's another place up high that you can pop your cat. So that's somewhere they like. Cats do like to get up high and they do feel safer up there as well. And then I guess the final thing for reducing stress if your cat really is super anxious is to consider medication. So there are other medications that we can give that really will help your cat relax, help them become very compliant, and will help get whatever needs to be done without too much difficulty. Now, if your cat really is severely matted, then it may well be that they need to be sedated to be fully clipped out. It's just going to be too uncomfortable. It's going to be too long a job to do it conscious. So if that's the case, then, don't stress too much about that. Obviously, you're going to need to talk to your vet about the safety and the appropriateness of that for your cat. So if they're otherwise healthy, then the risks are very low. If they're elderly and there are other concerns, so if they've got kidney disease or if there's any other problems, then it may be that there are risks that mean that sedation isn't going to be ideal. So that's going to be something to do, to talk about with your vet. But if that does need to happen, then you really need to make sure that you then keep up with regular grooming so it doesn't get to that situation again. Unfortunately, at the clinic where I work, we will often see, especially our exotic cats, so our Persian cats and similar breeds, are really often get a problem with this. They've got very fine fur that felts very easily and gets really bad matting, and a lot of the time the owners aren't putting in the required time to regularly groom their cat, and that should really be a daily activity, because if you're just brushing your cat every day, it's only going to take 5 or 10 minutes. You're going to stop them becoming matted. And I think it's really important not to underestimate how uncomfortable that matting can be. So they form really hard, tough mats. That means that the flexibility in the way that your cat can move is going to be really limited, because effectively when they're moving, if they're stretching too much, if they're moving too much in one direction, then that's going to be really pulling on their hair and it's going to be really uncomfortable. So if you're getting any kind of long-haired cat, any exotic cat, just any cat in general, especially one that it seems to be prone to matting, you're going to need to get them used to being groomed on a regular basis. And you should be doing that when they're kittens, while they're still young, and when they're going to accept that as a normal thing that happens, rather than waiting until there's a problem when they're old, maybe when they're a little bit painful, and then trying to instigate grooming, because you'll be on to a losing battle there. It's going to be unpleasant for you, unpleasant for your cat, and you're not going to be able to get on top of that problem. So, those are all the things that we can do. Hopefully there's some points there, Christina, for your cat. The very first thing, though, we need to do is make sure that there's not an underlying medical condition that's causing this problem, either with the intestines causing loose stools. So that could be a dietary intolerance. It could be an inflammatory bowel disease. It could be parasite burden. There's lots of different things that could be causing long-term soft stools, or it could be a painful condition. So arthritis is really common and really under-recognized in cats as well. So let me know your thoughts. Head over to the show notes and leave me a comment and let me know kind of how you get your cat, how you got your cat used to grooming, if there's any tips or tricks that you use to help your cat cope with being groomed, or maybe having some mats clipped out. I'd be really interested to hear your experiences in the show notes. So that's it for this episode of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's topic. There's definitely some very important points, whether your cat is long-haired, whether they're getting matted, or whether they're getting a bit dirty at the back end. But if you've got a dog as well, if they've got a long coat, then definitely grooming and regular grooming is just as important. And there's some strategies there to help that happen, and also to help their stress when you're going to the vet as well. If you do enjoy these shows, then these episodes, then make sure that you're subscribed. Also, if you do have a couple of spare minutes, I'd appreciate it more than you could imagine if you could head over to Apple Podcasts or wherever it is that you're listening to this podcast, and just leave me a review and a 5-star rating. It helps more than you can imagine with other people finding this podcast. It helps surface it in search more, and that will allow me just to help more pet owners and help more dogs and cats live healthier, happier lives, which is what I'm all about. You could also head over to ourpetshealth.com/review to leave me a review there. Thank you so much. And until next time, I'm Dr. Alex. This is Call the Vet. Take care.
You've been listening to Call the Vet. Be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode of the show that answers all of your pet questions.